Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's meeting, regular meeting of the Mayor and Board of Trustees for March 26th. Our first order of business is, of course, the Pledge of Allegiance, and tonight we're going to be led by Kate Williams from St. John of the Cross. She is here tonight with her mom and dad, Jeff and Sharon, and she is a fifth grader at St. John. She's an excellent student. She enjoys social studies and math, as well as a lot of sports, volleyball, basketball, cross country, and track. And she enjoys music and arts, and she has a pretty full schedule. She also volunteers for Bernie's Book Bank, and she enjoys shopping around downtown Burr Ridge. So we love hearing that. And hanging out with her brother Adam when he's home from college, who goes to Indiana U. She's soon to be around the corner going to Florida, and in May she'll have an opportunity to go to Germany with her dad. And she's very goal-oriented, and she intends to follow in her brother's footsteps. She would like to be a news reporter when she grows up, and with the energy, confidence, and leadership skills that Kate demonstrates, her mom knows that Kate will surely accomplish her goals and more. So, Kate, go. Lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks again, Kate. Karen, may I have roll call, please?
Trustee Francis.
Here.
Trustee Model. Trustee Pavesa.
Here.
Trustee Patel.
Here.
Trustee Snyder.
Yes.
Trustee Schiappa. Mayor Straub.
Here. Are there any residents that would like to address the board at this time? Okay, we will now go through the consent agenda, otherwise known as the omnibus vote. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the village board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so request, in which event the item will be removed. The minutes, 5A, receive and file draft plan commission meeting of March 19th, 2018. Ordinances, 6B, approval of an ordinance granting special use approval pursuant to the Burr Ridge zoning ordinance to permit a medical clinic in an light industrial district at 6860 North Frontage Road. That's Argerwall. We have resolutions. Adoption of a resolution authorizing the village to enter into a contract for the purchase of electricity from the lowest cost electricity provider for the pump center account. 7B, adoption of a resolution to endorse the legislative action program of the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference for the 2018 legislative session. Excuse me. Under considerations, we have 8C, approval recommendation to award contract for village-wide landscape maintenance. D, approval of recommendation to award contract for mosquito abatement. E, approval of recommendation to amend contract for engineering services of the Wolf Road pedestrian crossing improvement. F, approval of recommendation to award contract for the purchase of public works equipment trailer. G, approval of vendor list in the amount of $332,854.48 for all funds, plus $199,910.22 for payroll, for a grand total of $532,764.70, which includes no special expenditures. May I have a motion to approve the following items in the consent agenda? That would be 5A, 6B, 7A and B, 8C, D, E, F, and G.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Snyder.
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa.
Yes.
Trustee Francis.
Yes.
Trustee Patel.
Yes.
4-0.
Motion passes 4-0. Under ordinances, 6A. Doug?
Yes, I'd like to ask Assistant to the Village Administrator, Evan Walter, to present this ordinance for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Pollack.
This is 6A, it's an ordinance. The consideration is to amend the municipal code to require the removal of fallen trees across property lines. So currently, right now, Section 57 of the municipal code deals with trees, the village forest, overall parkway trees, things like this. Currently, right now, there is a regulation in place which mandates that village residents who own property near a right-of-way, a public street, things like this, if there's a fallen tree or a tree that is grossly overgrown, blocking a sidewalk, some sort of public access, they're required to either clean it up or trim it back to make sure that the public access is clear and people can walk, ride their bikes, or drive their cars, or whatever they need to do to get through. Right now, there's no portion of the code that compels the village or gives the village the authority to compel residents to clean up trees that have fallen across property lines. So if there's a tree in someone's side yard and it were to fall due to wind or some circumstance, and it were to fall across a property line, currently there's nothing in the code that I, as the acting code officer, would be able to go to that resident who owns that property or lives at that property and say, I'm asking that you please clean this tree up back to on the other side of the property line. We have several code cases that are currently active, which have brought this forward. We've also had several residents inquire about such an ordinance. But for now, all I can really do is ask nicely and hope that they're neighborly. But in a few cases, we found that they aren't, and the tree just does sit there. So this would be cleaned up at the person who owned the tree's expense. So if it was your tree that fell across the property line, it'd be up to you to clean it up, whether that's hiring a service, getting a chainsaw out there, or an axe or something on your own volition. We don't really care how you clean it up, as long as you clean it up back to your setback line on the other side. So that's really the essence of the request, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Trustees, any questions? Okay.
If someone doesn't have the means to clean it up, is there a service they can call, or, I mean, will the village help with that?
That's a great question. It's usually not been our practice to, we'll say, remedy private matters like that. There are obviously rare cases where we'll have the authority to put a lien on someone's property, but we really never try to go that far. We try to make sure that the resident has every chance to clean it up on their own time. Code cases are all a bit different. If it's, if 10 trees were to fall and the person was elderly and did not have great means, we might give them an extra might give them a longer time. If it's a small tree, we might ask that it be cleaned up fairly quickly. It really just depends on the situation, but we try to work with every resident to make sure that everybody gets a fair shake in the code cases. But as far as, I'm sure they could call a private service on their own, but there's no village program that would pay for such a service. We're simply asking for the authority to do so on a code basis.
And if they don't clean up, then what happens?
We escalate it on a code basis. Standard code enforcement procedures say that we ask them first. We make just a face-to-face contact. After that, I'll send a letter. If there's still no response, or if they're telling me no, I'll send a violation letter. If they still refuse to that, at that point we can cite them and fine them, and we can take them to court to remove it.
Trustee Francis?
So to summarize, for the most part, Burridge residents have been good neighbors and have cleaned up trees that have fallen across property lines without intervention from the village. It's just been a few cases where that hasn't happened, and so you're asking for some additional language in the ordinance to allow the village to compel the property owners to take care of that.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, actually, if you'd like to address the
I didn't come here prepared to talk about on this matter, but I wanted to point out an observation. 3 years ago, I had a tree in my yard fall on my neighbor's fence, and I paid to have their fence repaired and cleaned up. And then about 3 weeks later, my insurance company came out to do a review, and they informed me that the party whose tree was on their property is not the responsible party to clean it up. It's considered an act of nature. And my neighbor's insurance should have paid to have their fence repaired and the tree removed. And I hate to do this to you, but I don't know what that means if we're now, if you came to me and said you must remove that tree, when my insurance company doesn't cover that, the neighbor's insurance company covers that. that might be confusing.
Mm.
Hate to do this to you.
Interesting. Well, thank you. Any questions? Evan? Any, perchance, do you have any information regarding that?
No, that's all true. We're not disputing that. That's the way the insurance company works. This is simply if the tree were to just fall as is, we would just be saying that it'd be the owner of the tree's responsibility to clean that back up. Yes, there are instances where if it were to fall through a house or cause some sort of property damage, no, that's exactly right. Staff has no dispute of that. But the two I have outstanding right now, just as an example, fell across somebody's property line into somebody's backyard and landed on nothing but grass. And so there's technically no reason to get the insurance involved in such a case because nothing was broken. And in this case, who is the responsible party to clean that up? Is it the person whose tree fell on their yard or the person whose tree fell into their neighbor's yard? I think that was kind of the central debate of the question. We wanted to make sure that the amendment, or at least the proposed amendment, in theory really gave the village as little power as possible. We don't want to be managing everybody's backyard forever. So we wanted to make sure this had as little teeth as possible. We didn't get into everybody's affairs, but no, that interpretation is correct regarding the insurance.
Sounds like a personal responsibility amendment.
I think that's correct, yeah.
Any other questions, Bevan? May I have a motion? Is there a motion? I may have a motion to approve 6A, consideration of an ordinance amending section 57.16 for trees of the Burr Ridge Municipal Code.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Mattel.
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa.
Yes.
Trustee Francis.
Yes.
Trustee Snyder.
Yes.
4-0.
Motion passes 4-0. Under considerations, 8A. Consideration of Water Committee recommendation to amend consumer rates for water and sanitary sewer.
Yes, thank you. The Water Committee met on February 26th to review the water fund budget for fiscal year 18-19 and future years. At that time, staff had presented some information to the committee and a recommendation that it would be appropriate to raise water rates due to the condition of the existing fund. The chart on the screen shows the history of the water fund since 2007. In 2007, we had a $6 million reserve in that fund, and now in 2018-19, it's hovering just over $1 million. And with projected the improvements we know we have to make in the next 3, 4, 5 years, we'll go into a deficit with no rate increase. Should also note, just as an aside, that our infrastructure for water is valued in excess of $100 million. So it gives you an idea of what type of infrastructure we're talking about in this case in the water fund. Also, I want to mention for the public that a reminder that the water fund is an enterprise fund, meaning that all costs associated with purchasing water and supplying water to consumers is paid for through fees collected. Water fees collected for water bills do not go into any other funds. They're used exclusively to maintain the water system. So with that in mind, we presented this chart to the Water Committee. We also talked a little bit about the condition of our water system. It's becoming an older system. Its age is always relative, but we are seeing water main breaks in every year, averaging about 16 per year, which tells you that replacements may be needed in the future. Just this last year, we had 2 water main breaks on 1 water line, and the end result of that was the need to remove it and replace that line, and that's a $300,000 expense that was unanticipated. And those are the types of unanticipated expenses that we can anticipate, if you will. We also know that we've got 2 water towers that need rehabilitation and painting. And that's $1 million for the larger, over $1 million for the larger water tower, and $500,000 or so for the smaller water tower. Those are in the budget, but again, we know that there will be other unanticipated expenses. So the Water Committee agreed unanimously that we did need to look at a rate adjustment. And the table on the screen now shows what happens if we do not make a water rate adjustment, and it also shows, includes the anticipated, the known expenses, including the water tower painting that is required. And you can see by year 2021, we'll be in a deficit in the water fund. So not raising the rates is not really an option, given that this is an enterprise fund and it has to pay for itself. The Water Committee looked at several different options for raising the rates, with the goal of creating a reserve fund that will cover additional expenses, unanticipated expenses that will come up over the course of the next 1 to 5 years. In the end, the committee is recommending that the rate adjustment be for 10% for the first year, fiscal year 18-19, and 8% for each additional 4 years after that. That will build up the reserve funds, again, without any unanticipated expenses, to just under $5 million. And it would be about still be under 5% of the cost or of the value of the infrastructure being maintained. As a comparison to other villages right now, we're one of the 2 lowest municipal water rates in DuPage County. With the 5-year program, 10, 8, 8, and 8% recommended by the Water Committee, we would, compared to current rates in other villages, we would be at 10.10 per unit cost, and that would still keep us in the middle of the range. And assuming this other villages will inevitably increase their rates, we could still be in the lower end of these other villages at that time. And finally, I've got a table showing the increases for a typical $10,000 use, 10,000 gallons of water being used over the course of a 2-month period. Right now, in 2017-18, the total annual bill is almost $450. With the recommended increase next year, that would go up to just over $500. And then, as you can see, the annual increase over the next 5 years is shown on the table.
Can you go back to the comparison of the different towns? So if I'm reading this correctly, you're looking at a town like Downers Grove is approximately 30% higher than us. Willowbrook, 50% higher. Hinsdale, about 80% higher. Willow Springs, same thing. Clarendon Hills, twice as much, essentially. Interesting. So we're how many you got there? 1, 2, 3. 23 towns were the second lowest.
Right.
Mayor,
Yes, Trustee Snyder?
we really need this increase for a few reasons. One, even if we have these increases the next 5 years, we'll still be in the middle if it was today. That's still going to put us back at the very low end of everything. We have a lot of things. A few water mains break, we could be upside down. Without this in situation going forward, we're going to be looking to you to like send a love note to all of our residents, saying, "Hey, I know I'm the mayor, but can you all deposit $1,000 in the Blue Ridge bank account for the water main?"
Okay. Trustee Francis?
So if we go back to the chart with the water main breaks, please. So the 16-year average is 20.4. If you do a 5-year average, it's 25.4 breaks per year. Okay, our system, our infrastructure, our water infrastructure delivery system is aging. Some parts are over 50 years old. We're gonna have more breaks every year than less. It's not gonna get better, it's gonna get worse. And we don't have the funding currently in place to allow for those repairs. I think it would be short-sighted on our part if we didn't increase the water rates enough to allow for timely and efficient repairs of these water mains, in addition to the painting of our 2 water towers. One other thing I wanted to mention was if we go to the chart what the average homeowner pays. The bottom line to the residents is a $55.92 increase to the average residential user. That's, I don't know, $5 a month, roughly, is what the average resident would pay out of their pocket. That's one coffee at Starbucks. So I don't think it's really going to be hurting the residents. It's going to help our village allow them to respond quickly and timely to water main breaks, provide good quality water, and also maintain our infrastructure as it needs to be.
Trustee Beza?
Well, the discussion at the water committee meeting bounced back and forth. There was no doubt that we had to increase our water rate. And whether it was 8-10%, I talked to Jerry Taft before the meeting. He said he calculated in at 10% for the coming year. I don't have a problem with that. My problem is making us commit to 4 years down the road. I mean, next year, 4 times 8 for the next 4 years, that's what I'm against. Next year, there's no doubt the way things are going, we're gonna have to have an increase next year. Now, what it'll be, I don't know. But to arbitrarily say automatically for the next 4 years, I don't think Burridge has ever done this, commit to an 8% raise. I'm against that. The one thing that we really didn't take into consideration at the meeting, and that's one of the reasons I don't want to automatically commit to something, is that if we have a hot, dry summer, the water profit for the year expands automatically, and there's no doubt we'll have to have but is it going to be 10%, 6%? Is it going to be a hot summer, going to be a wet summer? At this time, the only thing I'm against is automatically creating a raise 4 years in a row at 8%.
Mayor?
Hold on a second. Trustee Mittal, I want to say something first.
I think it is important to be proactive, and all these water pipes need to be maintained, and it is expensive. So I think it's fair to raise the rates, but I do agree with Trustee Pavesa. Maybe we can reassess the situation next year and then make a decision based on that, rather than just automatically increasing them.
Or something like 10-5-5-5.
That would be fine
It's a little
too.
more palatable,
Yeah.
and whether or not, I'm not sure how you arrived. Arrive's not the right word. At the 8% is, perhaps Jerry can answer that question, is the 5% number still palatable, or?
I don't think we should do anything 4 years in a row, because we can't predict that.
Mayor, my turn.
Just can't predict, how much money we might have to go to 10% again next year. But if we have a hot, dry summer, we might not need anything. That's my problem, is automatically going 4 years down the road at 8%. Because we have no way of it's not like our village staff or anything else. Weather and water main breaks has a great impact on the water budget. And that's the reason I only want to go a year at a time.
Mayor, may I speak?
Yes, Trustee Snyder?
Yes, I came on the water committee this year, and first thing is, we're upside down to begin with. Whoever was running the board for the water committee in the past definitely let us down. We're in a situation where you're looking down the road. You have 6 water mains that are 50 years old. Number one, a 10% increase this year is great. The next 4 years at 8% doesn't even put us at 50% of where we would be with everyone else in all of the other local villages. Granted, next year after, if we make a lot of money and everything's going great, maybe in 2 or 3 years, maybe reduce it to 6%. But right now, you can't cut back without protecting yourself for the future. You're going to be still upside down. You're going to be sitting here and going through the same discussion next year and the year after when you try and cut back. The whole point of this thing is to get yourself out of trouble and go forward. We were in a situation that we should have had money in the fund, and we're not there. Why? I don't know. That's not my situation. The 10%, the 8 and 8, puts us in a situation as if today, 5 years from now, we will be in the middle of the pack. In the middle, not above, not below, in the middle of the pack. Today, 5 years from now, we're still going to be at the bottom end. That's my feeling. So I really I'm strongly on this going forward of putting the 10% in the 4 years of 8. And if we have a really great year in the second or third or fourth year, the committee can get together and then reduce it. But right now, you need the money. You've got situations between the tanks and your water mains. If something goes sideways, you're going to be looking for money, and where are you going to get it?
Okay, thank you. And just a point of clarification for the audience: this is not necessarily an automatic increase today. If the board votes on it, it then becomes an ordinance to be discussed at a later board meeting. So, but so that's kind of the status of it currently, and at which time everybody would be out. We're not ready to the audience section yet. Thank you. Trustee Francis.
Sure. It might be a hot, dry summer. It might be a cool, wet summer. We've had 12 water main breaks already in 2018. We're on a pace right now after 3 months to have 48 water main breaks this year. 48, that would be a record. Where's that money going to come from? We'll have to take it from the general fund because we'll be upside down. And that'll take money away from the road program, the pathway fund, sidewalks, whatever. We need to get this money in place now. We can always go back in the future, and if it is a hot, dry summer, we can always reduce these rates. It's much easier to reduce rates than it is to increase rates, but if we get this in place now, we'll build up a cushion. I understand what was done in 2007, 2008, when there was $6 million in the fund, and the village was trying to survive the recession just like everybody else in the village was. They took money from the water fund and put it in the general fund to pay for the programs and the services that the residents expected. And every year we've chipped away at that reserve, borrowing from, because we've been using it to pay for the water main breaks, using it to pay for maintenance. Well, we're getting to the point now that after this year, we're going to be upside down, like Trustee Snyder says, and we need to build the reserve back up so that we do have a cushion. We can pay for those $300,000 water main breaks that occur in the village that happen in January when it's the most expensive time. We have to hire outside contractors. We can't do the work ourselves. We need that cushion. And that's why I support this tiered rate increase.
Thank you.
Well, like I said, I've got no problem with increases. Everything Trustee Francis said is true about what we can expect with water main breaks and other things, but my object is just locking in 4 raises in a row for the next 4 years. That's the thing I'm objecting to. I don't have no problem with this year's increase, and next year might be 6%, might be 8%, might be 10%, but I don't like to lock in the village 4 years in a row.
And the village administrator, what's normally been done in the past, and is it And then is it
Well-
normal for,
Well, I can tell you, we've never done this.
To my knowledge, we haven't locked in or committed to future increases. But I would say that you're never locked in, except for that first year. You can come back a year from now and you can say, wow, the fund's doing much better than we expected. Let's cut it to 5% instead of 8%. Or the other way around, you could, a year from now, the water committee will meet again as they always do, and we'll look at the fund and we'll say, okay, let's ride with what we've already said and we don't have to take any further action. But you're really, the future 4 years, the future 8% 4 years is really just a signal for a planning function. It allows us to plan and to know that we're at least going to be able to build up that reserve the way we've shown. If 1 year does better than another, you could reduce it any given year, but I don't think you're really committed in future years. You're just saying that this is your plan.
5%? That would be compromise.
Mayor,
Yes, trustee?
I love what Doug just said. It's shown. It's potentially up or down. Bottom line is, we're so far behind without a little protection, as Trustee Francis said, we can always go backward. Bottom line is, we're looking for tomorrow. With our infrastructure being where it's at, if we don't protect it, how are you going to go to all of our residents and say, listen, we're in problems, and all of a sudden give them a 50% increase? It's not. You're not going to exactly be well liked, Mayor. Bottom line is this: we need to protect for the future, and everything from the past. Whoever was running in the past wasn't doing his job.
And regardless, whatever is agreed upon tonight, it could also be adjusted 2 weeks from now when you're all in the room, so.
Yeah, the final vote will take place 2 weeks from now. We're just looking for direction on how to prepare an ordinance.
Okay.
Do you need a motion?
Yes.
Actually, not yet. We need to go to the audience first, then we'll bring it back to the board. If there's someone in the audience who'd like to address the board?
Alex Crampett, 7515 Drew Burr Ridge. Just a clarification, the picture that you had of all the towns up there, I believe that included their sewer? That wasn't just a water increase? Is there clarification? Is that in fact the case? I mean, their rates are considerably higher because they include the sewer charge. And then secondly, you're asking here not only to increase the water fees for Burr Ridge residents, but it also sounds like you want to also increase here your sanitary and sewer fixed rate by $5 each in the next 5 years. So I'm kind of leaning towards that's starting to add up when you add additional sewer costs in addition to the water. I understand long-term we need to be proactive, like you said, and plan for the future. Our system is aging. But when you go from $400 to $600 in 2 or 3 years, I mean, that's quite a big chunk of money for water. And it's even higher if you're including that sewer cost. So I prefer, like, you know, the 10% for 1 year, maybe 5, and not go out more than 3 years at least. Come back and revisit those rates. But is there clarification on the sewer included in those rates for our town? That would be still additional, right?
The sewer is not included in any of these rates.
Right, but
This
you
is
also
just
want to
water.
increase that according to the report,
The committee recommendation a year ago was to increase it $5.
in addition to
every
this
year.
10% and the 8 and the 8 and the 8.
But this
So,
table is only water rates for these
so
other
it's only
towns.
water. Okay, so really, we're increasing our rates a lot more than what you've posted up there for us. So I think we need to clarify the real numbers that include the sewer.
Doug, she said it's actually more than what's in there. Is that true or not?
By $2.52 bi-monthly. As you can see from this table, the fixed charge, there's a fixed charge and then there's a variable rate. And right now, our fixed charge is $7.48. bi-monthly, for 2 months. So if you're out of town and you don't use a drop of water, you're paying $7.48 a month, or every 2 months anyway.
So we go from
Recommending
$7.48 to $10.
to $10, right? So it's,
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to address the board? Okay, now it's back to the board. Any other discussion, any motions?
So if we put in, instead of the 8%, 8%, 8%, 8%, we put in 0%, how does staff plan for those years in the activities that they need to do?
I think they recommend to us, what we need when we have our meeting.
But our budget, our 5-year annual, our 5-year budget needs to account for that.
Right.
right, I mean, you can go year to year, but, I mean, even at 10% in the 8%, you're still looking at only building up a reserve of $4.9 million for capital infrastructure that's valued at well over $100 million.
Correct.
5% reserve is still pretty low, I would say.
And were we overly optimistic in previous years?
I can't speak to why we didn't adjust the rates in previous years.
It's kind of like sometimes you don't always do the math right, kind of like with retirement plans,
Push it forward.
Oh.
I'm sorry, Trustee Snyder, do you have something you want to add?
I'd like to ask, so the bottom line is, as Doug just said, if you're in the low end, you have $100 million infrastructure, and you're only have $4 million. Doug, can you tell everyone what an average cost on a bad day when a water main breaks? If we lost a full water main, is it $750, $1 million? If one of our water towers goes, you were telling us in the water meeting, it's $1.5 million on one and $500,000 on another, which needs help right now. Am I wrong?
No, running a water system is expensive. First of all, we talk about painting the water towers at $1.5 million, $500,000. I want people to understand that's just not for aesthetics. That painting includes patching and rehabilitation and absolutely necessary work to keep the water towers functioning. It's not just so they look nicer.
How many gallons are there?
We have 2 different sized water towers.
I know they're a lot bigger if they were on the ground.
Underground, we've got 3 million. Above ground is the 2 million gallon tank, the one behind Harvester Park, and then 300,000 gallons is over there on 83rd Street.
So you have 2 million underground?
3 million underground.
I'm sorry?
3.
3. Now, do those have to be maintained also, or are we just talking about the above ground ones?
The underground does get inspected and maintained too. That's like a big 12-foot deep concrete wall.
But the estimates you're talking about needing painting, you're talking about only the above ground ones.
Right,
The one that's 2 million and 300 or 500,000.
And just to further answer Trustee Snyder's inquiry, we just, in this coming year's budget, 18-19 budget, we added over $300,000 for replacement of a water main that we had no idea 6 months ago that we were going to have to replace.
Right.
We had 2 water main breaks on County Line Road, and it was determined that section of water main had to be replaced, and that just came out of nowhere, and we could not anticipate that. And so the idea of a reserve fund is that you can always cover those costs without having to borrow money.
Okay. Trustee Matala?
Yeah, maybe what we can do is, we're doing the 10% this year, we do the 8% automatically next year. Year 3, we can have it on the plans to do 8 the following years, but just reassess the situation year 3 and see how things are going. Because it makes sense to front load the fund. If we are cash rich going into it, then chances of running out of money are less.
Question, when you figured the water budget for next year, did you take into account the amount of water or estimated amount of water the senior citizens gonna use, the new hotels gonna use, and the new houses that are being built? So our water usage is gonna go up, and I was just wondering if that was included.
Yeah, we did take a % increase and look back a few years to see how water use was increasing. At the same time, a lot of the water fixtures are water saving type fixtures and toilets. So it's not as dramatic as you would expect coming in with that kind of population. But we did take a projection based on that.
Okay. Trustee Francis?
So Trustee Mattal's question, that's what the Water Committee does every year, is they look at the water rates, and look at the reserve, and they look at the forecasted expenditures, and then review those pages of the budget to make sure that they'll get us through that year and into the next year to fund those projects. That's done every year. So,
No, but what I'm saying is we can vote on it year 3, once again, that we want to continue with the 8% increases. Maybe we may need 10% at that time, who knows?
well, like staff has said, it's a guide. Future years out, our guide, a guidance for the plan. So we're planning for the future. For example, another point I want to make is that in the older subdivisions like Carriageway and such, those water systems are over 50 years old. At some point in time, it's going to become uneconomical to continue to patch those systems, and they'll have to be replaced. And that's what's done in older communities. They replace their water systems when they're uneconomical to continue the continuous patching that has to be done to keep the system operational. So we don't have funding, we don't have the reserves to have a system replacement. So this is, again, allowing us to prepare for the future. Unexpected water main breaks.
Okay. Any other discussion? Are there any motions or amendments to the motion?
I'd love to make a motion that we go forward on this, Mr. Mayor.
So you're making a motion, Mr. Snyder, Trustee Snyder, to accept the Water Committee's recommendation for the tiered rate increase of 10%, 8%, 8%, and 8%?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Trustee Francis, for specifically breaking it down. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. I'll second that.
You would be directing staff to prepare that ordinance for the
Correct.
next meeting. Got it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Like I said, I don't mind the 10%. I just don't like future raises. We've never done it, and I don't see why we should do it now.
But point of clarification, it can be adjusted in future years.
Yes, absolutely, and we will be back to you a year from now with a report on how the water fund is doing and a recommendation from the water committee to keep the status quo or to make a change.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any other discussion? May I have roll call?
No.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
No.
Trustee Mattal?
Yes.
3-0.
Motion passes 3-0 to direct staff to prepare the ordinance with the new tiered rates for further discussion and at the next board meeting. Okay. 8B, consideration of Plan Commission recommendation to amend section XB7 of the zoning ordinance relative to outside overnight parking of commercial vehicles in manufacturing districts, Z03-2018. Mr. Walter.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As stated, this is item B, amending the zoning ordinance dealing with outdoor commercial parking of vehicles in manufacturing districts. So this was taken up by the Plan Commission over, I believe, 3 separate occasions. The first was to ask for a public hearing, and then we had 2 discussions on this matter over 2 public hearings. So as stated, section 10.b.7 of the zoning ordinance currently limits the number of commercial districts and currently limits the number of commercial vehicles that may be parked outdoors overnight in manufacturing districts. These include basically our general industrial, light industrial regions of the village. Think about like Mars, Hinsdale Industrial Park, Burr Ridge Industrial Park, Tower Drive. This is primarily where these zones are located within the village. Currently, the zoning ordinance states that there are the limit is 2 for outdoor trucks that can be parked outdoors overnight. These trucks have a size limit as well, I should say a weight limit, 24,000 pounds gross net weighting. So that's with the truck and everything loaded into it has to be 24,000 pounds or less. So we're talking basically, think of a medium-sized box truck or maybe a U-Haul, something like that. Since the zoning ordinance was adopted in 1997, the Plan Commission has received 10 total petitions for special uses to park more than 2 vehicles outside, all of which were approved. The Plan Commission has a standard procedure that says if special uses for particular items within the zoning ordinance are continually approved or are routinely approved, it's good to look back and see if there's any amendments that are desired by the Plan Commission and Board to tweak these regulations in any way. As stated, there's been 10 total petitions. The most recent one we encountered was by Permaseal. They requested 40 trucks be placed on their lot overnight outdoors. This was approved. As I said, all 10 have been approved. But really, this led staff to ask the question of whether this special use should be reviewed for future appropriateness. The Plan Commission has, as I said, reviewed this on several meetings. The Plan Commission discussed this at length. There were several alternative methods that were brought in to regulate such action under consideration. As stated, currently we regulate on a standard number. That standard number is 2. They also discussed regulating on the basis of building square footage, so a number of trucks per square footage in a commercial building, so every 1,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet, you can permit a truck outside. Number of spaces that that exist on a lot. So if a building had 30 spaces, perhaps every 3rd parking space could be used as a regulatory measure. But what was proposed by the Plan Commission was a simple adjustment to the standard rate. Very simply, the standard number that was recommended would be raised from 2 to 4. So any 4 trucks can be parked outside so long as they meet the 24,000 pound gross vehicle weighting. And then they also said that their recommendation should be made that you can park up to 8 trucks overnight, provided that 4 of them are 10,000 pounds or lower. So a 10,000 pound vehicle is we'll call it a class 2 truck in Illinois. This is like a heavy duty pickup. It's a little bit more every day. It's not as big, it can't do as much. It just has less performance than one of these larger trucks, so it would look a little bit smaller. Another common type of vehicle like this are kind of the Ford Transit vans that you see around town, a little bit smaller of a vehicle, more of a cargo van. There was a suggestion that trailers should be permitted to be parked outside, except limited to have 1/2 the number of total trucks outside, not to exceed the lowest rating in Illinois, which is 5,000 pounds fully loaded. Again, this is 1/2 the number of total trucks outside, not to exceed 4 trailers. So if you have 6 trucks parked on a lot, you cannot have more than 3 trailers on the lot under the proposed amendment. Special use hearings shall be required still for outdoor storage. So if you want to put a big box outside to store materials, you still need a special use for that. If you are parked, if your property abuts a residential district, such as Permaseal's property, that actually did happen. Anything over 4 would be a special use, so it'd be a little bit more stricter of a standard there. And also outdoor overnight parking of trucks exceeding 24,000 pounds would remain prohibited. So think of like a semi-truck. These would still have to be parked inside no matter what. These are the basics of the amendments that were proposed by the Plan Commission. Plan Commission Representative Mr. Stratus is here this evening to answer for any further questions, but I'll be here to answer any further that you have as well.
Trustees, any questions of Evan? Trustee Francis?
A comment and a question, please. First of all, I appreciate the Plan Commission being proactive. This will help potential tenants leasing in these areas remove the uncertainty involved in coming before the Plan Commission and obtaining a special use permit for their vehicles that they need for their business. So appreciate that. With this increase in the number of allowed vehicles, what percentage or how many out of the 10 last year would this have accommodated?
Yes, so we've had 10 in the past 20 years. This would have accommodated 2 of the petitioners. One of the petitioners asked for 4 vehicles, which was granted. Another one asked for 8 vehicles, which was granted. So The majority of the petitions that have come before the Plan Commission would still need to come before the Plan Commission, but this is really, as Trustee Francis stated, really more of a benefit to a smaller business. Somebody who's just not as large and is not as great as an impact on an industrial park.
Other communities have similar restrictions in place on the number of commercial vehicles can be parked outside.
Burr Ridge is unique in that we have restrictions on how many vehicles can be parked on your own property. Every village that I've researched on this topic says that you can't park on the street overnight, which I can certainly understand. But we are unique in that we have some control over how many vehicles can be parked on private property. I should also mention that as part of this ordinance, all vehicles that if they are parked overnight, they need to be parked in the rear of the building. So they're not like on the parkway or in the right of way. They need to be parked in the rear of the building. And if there is no parking in the rear of the building, they need to be parked as further back in the side yard as possible. That would remain in place with this amendment.
And one thing to keep in mind is one of the kind of the spirit of this is to make it even a little more accommodating or welcoming to other businesses that upon which the village really depends on for our own revenue and growth. Case in point, a Permaseal company that just will be coming to us this year. We have over 200 employees at that organization and because we were able to be a little bit accommodating, we were able to get their business. So even though our Burr Ridge will still have one of the most restrictive rules, this loosens it up a little bit.
Yeah, it's a nice economic development, level for everybody. I want to mention one other thing, just so it's on the table and the public's aware of it. One final amendment to this would be that if a commercial property does abut a residential zoning district, the Plan Commission is requesting an amendment to say that a 6-foot solid fence shall be provided on the residential lot line if the user seeks to park more than 4 commercial vehicles overnight. So you'd still require that special use hearing, but that would be a requirement as such going forward. And that's really just an added acknowledgement that the residents are entitled to their privacy, even if they're located next to an industrial district.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Trustee Francis?
Well, yeah, no.
The Plan Commission also discussed about vehicles idling outside.
Yes, I'm still doing some research into that. That would probably come through the municipal code. We have some idling restrictions now, but that would be separate, and I'm basically just not able to get through that right now, but it would be a municipal code restriction.
I recall that being an issue on Tower Drive in maybe 1997 or 98. An ambulance company came in and let their ambulances idle outside, their diesel ambulances idle outside overnight, abutting the residences of carriageway condos, and it was quite an issue for the residents there.
Certainly.
I just wanted to mention that this was initiated by staff in direct response to your strategic goals, which included searching for ways to improve occupancy in our manufacturing and commercial districts. So, in response, this is one of many things we're looking at to implement those strategic goals, that one in particular.
Good point.
Thank you. Great. May I have a motion to approve 8B?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Paul? Vital?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Baveza?
Yes.
4-0.
Motion passes 4-0. H, other considerations for announcement, deliberation, and/or discussion. No official action will be taken. Trustee Francis?
A couple things. I understand there was a meeting with residents and the Tollway Authority last month. Did you want to bring the other residents in the village up to date on that?
Sure. We've posted some information on our website. The Tollway sponsored a meeting where they invited 11 property owners who they have identified as being properties that they will likely need to acquire land from. They only invited those particular property owners who were impacted in that way to specifically discuss property acquisition. And it's our understanding that the acquisition is relatively minor. It's 10, 20, 30 feet off the back end of the property. We've encouraged them to seek easements rather than acquisition because if they acquire the land, it may affect the zoning restrictions on a particular land, floor area ratio, setbacks, et cetera. But with an easement, it would not have that impact. But that's between the property owner and the tollway. It's my understanding the tollway is preparing appraisals and will be making an offer to those residents in the near future. Otherwise, we're still under the understanding that the sound wall that's there, even for these 11 properties but throughout the village, will remain in the same location. It will be removed and replaced and hopefully improved. We have set aside in our budget funding for a third-party engineer to evaluate those types of things to make sure that that we're getting the most that we can. Did I miss anything, Dave? Dave Preisick attended that meeting to represent the village, even though we weren't officially a part of the meeting. We wanted to have someone there just to listen and keep up to date. And again, there's more information on our website if anybody wants to check that out. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing us up to date. And my second question was, can you bring us up to date on the Pace parking lot expansion, please?
Yes, we just got a call 2 weeks ago from Pace saying that they've moved that back up there to the top of their list and that they are doing engineering right now, and they hope to be under construction in August or September. I don't know if I directed them to talk to Evan about filing a petition. So Evan, where are they at?
Yes, we anticipate that they will be filing a petition for a special use sometime in June.
To expand the parking lot.
Yes.
Thank you for the updates.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Thank you. Any residents' comments? Reports and communications from village officials? Just like to say thank God the election is over. Any non-residents like to address the board at this time? And we need to go into closed session to discuss the approval of closed session minutes of March 12th, 2018, collective bargaining, and also the deliberation of salary schedules and benefits for one or more classes of employees. Can I have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We are officially going into closed.